I'm Rumor, and thank you if you're joining me today. If you have not abandoned me as I have abandoned you the last few months, apologies for that. It's been a minute, hasn't it? I have no dramatic reason for being on hiatus. I just simply wanted to create more space for other things that I've been focusing on this year. You know, I said in a video earlier this year that I was focusing this year on just really flowing with my own natural rhythms. And, you know, obviously life can happen, external influences can happen, and you kind of get shoved into boxes here and there, routines, schedules, and whatnot. But to the extent that I could control how I dedicated my time, I have just been trying to go with what feels most natural. And I think it was just one of those things. This is the thing that sort of ebbed as something else wanted to flow. But anyways, I'm here now, so I may as well like do something, right? I thought I would just do kind of a general catch-up here, which is a catch-up on my practice and I guess other aspects of my life as viewed through the lens of my practice. We'll just see how it goes. I made up a list of all the random ass things, and I don't know how cohesive of a narrative this will be for you, but without further ado, will just say that since I last saw you, I think it was since I last, or at least since I last filmed a video, the deck and walk, finished that, and this is all I have to show for it. Which I don't mean to say it's nothing. It's not nothing. I filled about half of this little journal. This was the extent to which I engaged with it. I have spoken about this before in earlier videos, so I won't get into it now. And if you noticed any space in my flip through there, it's because Virgo and Libra, I actually will have to catch up on this year because I was out of town during that time last year and just didn't get around to those. So I'm not like officially complete with a full year cycle, but almost there. Just 2 more signs. But anyway, if you missed out on the deck and walk, or you did participate in it but are doing it again, and if you're doing it for the first time or considering doing it down the road, I was following Marlena Teresa's guidance on it. She did a video for every decan. Her commitment to it for an entire year was amazing, very inspiring, and she came up with an original spread for every decan as well, which she has since compiled into a book. So I will add a link in the description below for where you can find said book, as well as a playlist of her decan videos, because I highly, highly recommend that if you are just looking for a little guidance through it, if you're kind of daunted by the prospect and still not even really sure what a decan walk is to begin with. I honestly didn't know until Marlena started talking about it. So anyways, so I'm going from this little journal here to this big old one. So I completed this year-long quest, almost, asterisk, almost. This is my current year-long quest. And while I'm speaking of quests, I did decide not to do the Hollow Quest this year, which, again, something I mentioned in a video at the beginning of the year, wasn't seeming at the time like I was going to do it. Again, just trying to find my flow. And yeah, I flowed right out of that idea. I decided, you know what? 1 year-long endeavor at a time. The rest of my practice continues to just be loosey-goosey, spontaneous as I'm feeling it any given day, any given week, month. Just spontaneous readings is usually how I roll with it. I haven't been doing anything super consistent with it by any stretch, other than this, which is my ancestral grimoire work. So this is Nancy Hendrickson, and I also spoke to this as well, that I was getting going in it. This has been a journey. It's been fantastic. I've really loved it. I've really enjoyed this. And there's so much to it. I've decided to do a completely separate video on that. So I'm not going to share more on it right now. I will just do a separate video, and I'll share with you some of the discoveries that I've been making along the way, month by month, working with a different ancestor, the decks and tools that I've been using. And yeah, it's been great though. So TBD on that, but I promise I will come back with a video exclusively about that. So then, other than that, well, one thing that I've been focusing on this year, I had shared my year ahead spread. I reflected on my one from last year, and then I shuffled and laid out the new one for this year. And I didn't really reflect on what I thought that meant for me just yet. Typically, if I do the year ahead spread, I do the spread, I glance at it. I do take note of what cards are landing where, but then I just take a picture and shuffle it all away and let myself forget about it, other than the current card for the current time that I'm in, and thinking of how that might be reflecting what I'm experiencing. But I really don't generally like to use tarot predictively. I don't want to see too far ahead because I just know that those paths can change. So, yeah, it's kind of like an at a glance, energetically, where I might be any given point of the year. But anyway, I had a goal, though, in mind for this year, and as the cards were seeming to tell me, the central one that I had pulled, an oracle card, actually, to be like my theme of the year, there just seemed to be a real call for clarity, just like getting clear. And I've spoken before about how I felt like the last couple of years, just after losing a loved one, really kind of put my pilot light out, and I've just been trying to rediscover my spark, and kind of like lent itself to a mental haziness, and also just the age that I'm at, what my hormones are doing these days. Like, mental fog is just almost an ongoing state of mind, and lethargy, and just being really out of it. And so lots of ways for me to find my clarity, but part of it I felt was starting with my physical self. And that was kind of something that came up at for the end of last year, in my last year's year ahead spread, where I felt like it was in a combination of ways to kind of like get my energy up and get emerging out into the world again, where I'd kind of let myself withdraw a bit, and like swaddling myself in this little like comforting cocoon, licking my wounds for a time. And this is a year where I'm just really looking to like reemerge and be reinvigorated and get going and on projects and completing them, and getting things like out into the world, not just like holding on to things all to myself. So I think I'd spoken to how I felt like, this is something to approach like mind, body, and spirit, kind of bringing in all those elements. So anyways, the physical aspect of it, for body, again, with the age that I'm at, it's like there are these changes going on. It's like another adolescence, and it sucks. But I just thought, I've got to get going back into some kind of routine, with my fitness, because I think a lot starts there. You build that kind of energy, and then that energy feeds into the more mental, emotional, creative things, and it can just be this cycle where that just begets more energy. And so anyway, something I've been doing, and what's been really working for me, is just getting back into that kind of routine. I used to always be really regular with exercise, and I'd kind of fallen off of it. I'm not one who's very hardcore about working out. I don't like to sweat a lot generally, but I do have my usual things that I like, and I had to laugh at myself because early in the year I was thinking, it's so stupid. I was watching TV, and actually there were a couple of different shows where I saw someone swimming laps, and then like on something else, someone was talking about taking up swimming. And so I got in my head, like, I'm going to swim this year. And I'm not just going to swim this year. I'm going to like wake myself up at 6 a.m. and I'm going to go to a public pool. If there would even be one open at that time, I'm going to swim. Whatever, as if I don't get up at 6 a.m. Let me just say that. But swimming, I envy and admire those who do that. And I think it would be a wonderful thing for building strength and toning and so forth. It's so not my thing to do. So I was doing a tarot reading though, because I'm like, I really want to have this like this new start and get invigorated and break patterns and like do things that I wouldn't normally do. Like that's kind of a way I've been approaching this year too, like pushing myself out of my comfort zone instead of just like lapsing back into the usual habits that I have, because some either just don't serve me any longer or they just never have. And they could even be like unproductive. And so I just thought like anything I haven't tried before, this is the time to try something new. So anyways, I was actually using my travel deck of Buffy that I've trimmed down. This is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer deck. So it wasn't this copy of it, but just a little one that I had with me when I was out of town. And I decided to do a reading on it. Like, well, do the cards agree that I should just become this like hardcore swimmer? And they did not think so. And I won't share the whole reading of how I got there, but when I was like, okay, it was seeming like no, like, or like, think about it. You could do it in moderation, but you're probably not going to like hit it as hard as you think you're wanting to. So then I was like, well, what should I do? And I drew this. So basically I can lay down and sleep and I'll be super healthy. Awesome. Yeah, I wish, right? So then I'm thinking, okay, well, Four of Scythes, which is Four of Swords, I can see this being something that calms my mind. Something meditative or a type of exercise that lends itself to that mental stillness. And I think that could be a lot of things. But then looking specifically at the picture of the Buffy bot, I saw the wires going to where she's plugged in here because she's recharging overnight. And I was like, oh, this looks like core strength. Like I'm supposed to do core workouts and the way she's laying down, mat work. So that's how I got around to, okay, I was trying to break a pattern by trying something new that I wouldn't normally do, which is swimming. I really never do that. And I don't know that I'd be very good at it. And I think what psychs me out about going is that I feel like I'd swim one length and be like, I'm tired. Okay, I'm going to go now. Instead of like back and forth, back and forth. So I think the card was just telling me like, do what you do best. Do what you know, because it's worked for you in the past, and go back to that. And it's also going to have this element of mind body to it, because I've been doing Pilates since my 20s and I kind of fell off of it. And so basically that's what I've gotten back around to. I'm doing Pilates and yoga and mixing in some bar work as well, because I really do want to strengthen. And I really feel that that's something my body very much needs right now. As I get my aches and pains, my joints are not very good. So I've become super paranoid about keeping strengthened just to support my skeletal structure and to help me keep my balance, to maintain good equilibrium going into older age. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of a fun anecdote to share. Maybe you don't think so, but this was like a fun way for the tarot to communicate that to me. And that's what it's gotten me back into, and I've loved it. It's what I've been able to stick with. I think if I did the swimming, that could be awesome. I just don't think it would have been sustainable. I don't think I would have had the commitment to it. And so for me, it made much more sense to do the things that I feel I can keep doing and sustain over the long run to basically reach the goals that I was setting for myself. And anyways, I think this restful state of mind is something that's resulted from it. It helps. And every time I do a workout, I do also add on, stretching, but then meditation. So I've got a Peloton subscription, and I highly recommend it. I don't think you need to have the bike or any of the other equipment that they sell to do Peloton. If you didn't know this, it's not just spinning. Well, first of all, you could get a treadmill and do running. You could do rowing. But without equipment, they've got this whole slew of workouts that you can do, again, on the mat, like yoga, Pilates, there's weightlifting, there's just, again, meditation, all the stretching exercises. They've got workouts for mobility. I mean, I have been doing a workout just for my wrists, and that has it's worked wonders, because I am just kind of at this stage in life where, like, I get hurt more easily. I get strained more easily. So I was helping my mom out in her yard the other day, and my forearm was killing me. I kind of got a little bit overactive trying to deforest her backyard, and it hurt so badly. And then I just did this like 10-minute wrist mobility workout, and I was fine after that, like immediate results. So I've just been doing like a mixture of things like that, and really, again, in going with the flow of things, I've been listening to my body and feeling like, what do I need? Are my hips feeling really tight? Should I tack on an extra stretching exercise for that? Is my energy a little low today? I don't want to give myself that excuse for not doing anything, but maybe instead of a more intensive yoga workout, I'll do restorative yoga, and at the very least can be resetting my nervous system and stretching through some things that way, still helping my mind-body balance in that respect. So I didn't mean to bang on about this as long as I have. It's just been something that feels newer to me this year, like, than before. I again, always try to exercise, but where I feel more in a routine and where I'm really feeling the results of it. Like, I do just, as I'm sitting here and I'm hunched over with a terrible posture, but I really am feeling the results of it. I'm feeling stronger. I'm feeling calmer. I'm feeling like, not just like I have a sense of physical equilibrium. I'm feeling like I can generally, like, mentally stay balanced and like take things more in stride as a result of it. And so it's been good. And who knew that the Buffy Tarot would get me there? But speaking of Buffy and tarot, because I'm sure you're not sick of hearing me talk about this, as far as the more recent videos that I was making, or not recent, but just the last ones that I did. I wanted to share with you all my Fool for Tarot deck that I made as a Valentine to Spike. I shared a couple videos walking through the majors and the minors of this deck. I also came back once more with rhyming to share my sonnets that I had written for each of the majors. And so, just as a little update on this, I have finished the poems for the minor arcana now as well. So 78 poems done. You know, I had my illustrated majors, but I did pip style for the minors. But even with that, I decided to write poems that related to Spike's involvement in the show. So moments that aren't illustrated in the pips, but are verbally illustrated through the haiku that I wrote for each of the 40 numbered minors. So while I was going for his bigger growth arc in the majors here, for obvious reasons, there were other little moments where he appeared, or just circumstances throughout the series where Spike was involved, that I did reflect in the haiku if it seemed like this was boring. And then for the court cards, trying to find. Okay, court cards I did illustrate as well, and I wrote limericks for them. So there are 16 spike-related limericks that tie in with each of those cards. And the reason I'm getting into this with you when you're like, yeah, so this is a deck you just did for yourself. Have fun. Why are you sharing it with us if you're not going to actually share it with us? Well, tried to share it with you visually by doing walkthrough in case any Buffy fans out there would get a kick out of it. Wanting to open discussion on it if people agreed or disagreed on some of my choices for the cards as I talked through my rationale. But also, I did want to make this something that I can share with you. What I will do, at the very least, first of all, this is a newer copy of the deck because I made a couple of updates for the 9 and 10. I decided to give their toppings something different for those cups of cocoa. And then I have added a card. This is for the copies that I have that I may be gifting or selling. I don't know. I ordered a little tiny batch of them and I'll see what I do with them. So I included this card, the QR code. There is a link to a page that is still a work in progress where I am sharing a printable PDF with all the poems there if you'd like to see, and the card images will be there as well. So this is something, when it's ready, I'll share with you if you want to go and just take a bit of a closer look at things. But in the meantime, I also, in making those card updates, had a little fun doing a tuck box. He's a little vampire. Just generic, not branded or anything, but this is supposed to be the leather of Spike's duster, and then you've got the black denim on the interior as appears on the card fronts, and so it's just like a little tuck box. Has a title card with it. This is the smooth version. The other one I was holding was linen, and we'll see if anything more comes of this, all right? I'll think about it. I'll think if it's something that I can share beyond that. But again, it wasn't the original point. The point was to jumpstart my creativity, to get me revving on other projects, and it absolutely did. It worked. Ta-da! And now I have this deck that's fun, and I can play with it. And again, I've got other copies, and so I will keep you posted if there is anything more to say on that. But in the meantime, some coffee. Okay, so let's see. I don't often talk about like books that I'm reading. Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, PhD. Case studies of life between lives. This guy is a hypnotist who does past life regressions, and that was typically what he did. People tapping into lives they've lived before. But then inadvertently, it must have been something that he said, maybe just a certain phrasing, that he inadvertently stumbled into patients' memories about their lives after they died and before they were reincarnated into another mortal lifetime. So when that started happening, he was taking note of like what he was saying, how he was getting them there. And then he ended up kind of refining and deliberately bringing patients into, or should I call them clients? Maybe patients isn't the right word. Bringing his clients into that space, into those memories. So it starts with the sorts of experiences that we've already heard about through those who have temporarily died but come back. So the near-death experiences. But then this book goes beyond that. Like it keeps following, because these are not souls who went back into the body then. It wasn't near death. It was death, a permanent death. So his clients spoke about what happened as they just kept leaving and go into that next realm. If there are people there to greet them, what and who they see. And I can't even begin to describe for you. I would just have to recommend the book. If this is intriguing you in any way, shape, or form, again, whether you believe it or not, you're just interested, I highly recommend it. Even if you think this is totally like quack science, totally bogus, it's just fascinating. But anyway, while I was reading through that and was just like, I ended up grabbing a few decks. There's this one room I would sit and read in, and so I just kept the decks on the table there, because I knew that there now and then there'd be something that would spur me to just want to put my Kindle down and grab the decks and do a reading, just like different questions that it was raising for me. So because of the abstractness of the spiritual world, I was hankering for abstract decks. So the first one that I grabbed is one that I don't use all that often, but I tend to for like bigger spiritual, if not past life type readings, is the Marielle. The abstractness of this art, I just felt could really convey the sorts of messages and understandings that can't always be verbalized. Because I don't need to be. And I feel like especially when it comes to soul work, I don't think that needs to be verbalized necessarily. I'm just sort of looking for a knowing, an understanding that makes sense. So I thought this was a great deck for just that. Although that being said, there did come a time where, and fairly early on actually, I was hankering for a different deck to use, but keeping this one handy as I felt called to it. Again, staying with the flow and just going with what feels right. I then grabbed the Lioness Oracle Tarot, because things were just starting to feel really big and cosmic, and that's what this deck feels like to me. And again, with the collage, keeps that abstract quality. And I just really wanted something like this, which doesn't have to be this deck. It can be any collage deck, really. But something that just sort of dismantles order and reason and distills it down to just a few key symbols, which of course is what happens here. This is not one of the busier collage decks out there. you know, or sometimes the whole thing is just like loaded with stuff. It makes it, in most cases, pretty easy to just focus on one or two things. And I just felt that was really perfect for what I was doing. But then because this, and even the Marial, just seems so like big and out there, I wanted to ground that in something and make it sometimes feel a bit more mundane and graspable. I get, not in terms of comprehension, I guess just in terms of like maybe more translatable than like, okay, I do understand this message that feels big and I can't necessarily put into words. How does that translate then to this incarnation that I'm living now? So when I wanted to have something a little bit more accessible like that, I turned to my Practical Magic tarot deck, which is also collage. It feels like kitschier collage though, and there's keywords that come with this. At least for the minors, not the majors. So you still have the abstract, but then it brings in a bit of contemporary. There's a cheekiness to it. Very playful. It feels very youthful. It's very fun. It's very fun, and I don't know what to tell you. It was just something that I actually, well, I'll finish what I'm saying and then it's just something that I intuitively felt drawn to, and it was fun to use either in conjunction with one of these other two decks or just on its own, depending on what I wanted to read. But I had to laugh about this because what I'm going to share next is how I got into some soul conversations as I was reading through this book. And there was one I just kept asking more and more follow-up questions, and then I finally got this stuffy moment, which I felt like was my, I forget if I was in a conversation with my own soul, like my higher self, or my spirit guide. I think they were just like, shut this down, shut this down. Where's that Buffy Four of Swords card, right? Like, your mind, just shh, shh, it's okay, just calm. So that was my cue to end that reading for the moment, and so it was great. And I think that was a big reason why I wanted to use this deck too, because it does have these keywords, so it's almost like an oracle deck in that respect, and it would just give me something a little bit more concrete that, and helping to verbalize when I wanted that. And yes, there's another card that I wanted to find here that I thought was great, and I'll show you that in a second. But I've grabbed, here's my third journal to show you, but this is the kind of journal I do my like typical tarot reading entries in. If I'm journaling, I don't always. But so I've actually come to the end of this one. My soul musings brought me to the end of it. But just to share with you, for example, the types of readings I was doing as I'm reading this book, Journey of Souls, I felt compelled to grab the Lioness Oracle Tarot, and I asked, how old is my soul? And I got a King, which, because I was like, I have no idea, whatever card comes up. I just shuffled the entire deck, and I'm like, I'm just going to trust that whatever card comes up, I'm going to get a sense of old or young from that. So then a King, an actual court card, comes up. It's like, okay, that seemed like a pretty clear indication. And as I wrote here, I knew it. I'm an old one. I've been an old fart since the day I was born, folks. I've always been aware of that. And I mean, I act so immature, but I also have my inner child, but I also have my inner granny. And so I have always had a sense. And my mom always told me I was an old soul. So I loved that. And then I had asked, what message is my spirit guide trying to tell me that I haven't been hearing? And then like the next day I did even further, just follow up on that. Clarification cards, looking for added advice. Oh my God, this one day I did a soulmate reading because the transcripts, there's just certain excerpts throughout that book, as I should have said before. He shares the actual transcripts from parts of his client conversations while they're under hypnosis and recalling their lives between lives. And one section was speaking to how, we have these soul groups and how sometimes another soul will choose to incarnate with you to serve some sort of purpose in your life. And you might be concurrently serving a purpose in theirs in that incarnation as well. And it was just talking about how, like, couples meet, and he was sharing an anecdote about how he met his wife, and was just saying, like, think about your partner and how you came to meet them and the circumstances that led to that. And, if there's anything unusual about it, that can be your evidence right there that, like, this was something, planned. And so I was just sitting and thinking about meeting my husband, and we didn't even date each other right away because I was dating his best friend at the time. Yeah, the guy was best man at our wedding, and they're actually going to be hanging out with each other in Scotland this weekend. So they're still friends, and I'm still friends with this guy by virtue of them still being friends. So fun. It's fun to keep exes in your life, but it's fine. We had an amicable breakup. I broke up with him, for the record, twice. But anyways, I was dating him, this other guy, when I met my husband. And so I was like, oh my God, even if I dumped this jackass tomorrow, like, I'm not going to go after his friend. I respect the bros before hoes code. So I just had him off limits. But it was, I remember the night that I met him, I instantly had feelings for him that I just had to put in a box and store away. And I just chose to look at him as what I would like to find in someone someday if things didn't work out with this guy that I was dating at the time. He was sort of like the standard that I would set going forward, and I just thought that's the role that he was playing. So anyways, I think it was one of those things where it's just like the timing wasn't right, and so 6 years later we did finally find an opening where it worked out to date. And there were other circumstances that played out in between that were kind of unusual, and like I really don't, there were obstacles to it, and there were just certain things that happened that opened the path. So with that in mind, I just thought, yeah, okay, I could kind of see how that could be, like, either divinely designed from the beginning, or like based on our free will, if we were creating these obstacles, that there was just something put into place to kind of like open the gateway for that. And there was one of those things, again, there were multiple, but one of those things in particular I was thinking about might have been a soulmate encounter. And I'm not even talking about my husband as my soulmate. I'm talking about like a totally different guy that got me out of another relationship that I was in. So, like, needless to say, I did break up with this guy that my husband's friends with. Dated a few guys after that. But then the relationship that I was in before my husband was actually quite a serious one. And so there was someone else, a friend of mine that I used to work with, that I hadn't seen in a while. And he kind of came back into my life, and we didn't date or anything, but I did feel really interested in him. And it was, well, why don't I just share this with you? For context, I was in grad school at the time. The job where I had met him at, I had quit because I was changing career from finance to teaching. So I went back to school to prepare for that second career, and I was really isolated. I went to class and came back, and I lived in the same building as my boyfriend at the time, and I was kind of cut off socially, and I just kind of like, it just kind of got to be where like I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in this bubble, just this little isolated bubble with this guy. And I think that made it hard for me to like discern like whether he was the right person for me or not. Because when you're kind of in the bubble, you can't see it from the outside. I don't know. Everything becomes relative. There are certain things you just find yourself settling for without realizing that you're settling. So anyways, I was like, this guy got me, it didn't turn into another romantic relationship, but it got me out of one that then set up the right timing to get into a relationship with my husband. And so I just always wondered, like, what was the purpose of that? Was that a soulmate thing? If I wasn't meant to actually date that guy and be with him, was it so that I just knew that I should not be with this other one? So I'll actually read to you what I journaled about this using the Lioness Oracle Tarot, as well as a combined deck where I've shuffled the Cosmic Oracle with the Avatar Oracle. And then I don't have the guidebook here, but this is the Sacred Rebels Oracle. So I was using those three decks, but first with the Lioness Tarot, I just asked, like, who was that guy to me in the grander scheme, soul-wise? And I got the King of Wands, which was showing up again. That had shown up when I was doing a reading about my spirit guide, and I was wondering if the King of Wands represented my spirit guide. So then this made me ponder, like, so could he actually be my guide, since King of Wands was coming up again, incarnated? And while this might not seem possible for the spirit guide in this life, this book spoke to how our souls can, again, if you believe this, maybe we do kind of acknowledge this too anytime we speak of our higher self, like that part of us that is still divine and knows what we have forgotten while we're in this body. So that idea of like our soul being both in the spirit world and here. There was an insane story about a soul that was actually living two separate human lives concurrently. I'm telling you. So anyway, so I guess I had that idea, like, oh, could this be my spirit guide who's like still out there in the ether guiding me, but like also partially, part of it incarnated into this person, or at the very least, he's an old soul like me, and the solar imagery of this card is so powerful and cosmic. I do sense a soulmate connection here, a teacher at some level. Who is he to me in this life? And I drew Knight of Swords, for which I wrote, can I just say, really interesting that both who questions resulted in court cards. And yes, as we were younger when we interacted, he would have been a knight. This was back in my 20s. He would have been a knight, and he did very actively cut through my delusions at the time and challenged my perspectives of the relationship I was in, helping me see it with better clarity and remember who I am and what I wanted in life and in a companion. It was like being snapped out of a trance that my isolation had coated and muffled me within. And not only did the actual term soulmate enter my head at that moment, truly did, but his roommate actually said it out loud about us on a later night out as friends. And I just remember there was this one night we closed down a bar talking, like after not seeing each other for at least a year. We were just like in a zone talking to each other. And I mean, places shutting down, chairs being put on tables. We're the last to leave, and we shared a cab back to our respective apartments. And I just remember entering mine and like walking over, throwing my keys on the side table and sinking to my knees like, oh my God, what is the consequence this is going to have on my relationship? Because I think this guy's my soulmate. And what do I do about the relationship that I'm in? And then I did break up with the guy I was dating, and then I started hanging out with this guy, but just very platonic hangouts. We never crossed any sort of romantic lines. I went to movies, we went to the driving range, hit some golf balls, like just very, very like benign. But there was a night out with friends, and yeah, his roommate came up to me and told me that we were soulmates, and I was like, okay, so there must have been a conversation going on at their apartment that this guy would have used that word, and yet never asked me out. I never asked him out. So that's why I was just curious with this. Like, what was the point of that? Oh, so speaking of, my third question was, what was the purpose of our interaction? And I got 7 of Pentacles. By that point, I had sown seeds for potential future paths as a teacher and this other guy, my ex-boyfriend's partner. My stomach actually feels sick at the thought of the latter. Talk about dodging a bullet. Like if I had stayed with that guy. Bleh. And yet I'd been oblivious until this other guy pulled me out of it. My attraction to him, how easy he was to talk and joke with, how much he felt like home. That was very much a term I consciously thought at the time, just like soulmate, home. And ever since, I have recognized how pivotal that friendship was, albeit brief and never turning into something romantic. I think I was starting to lose myself, and he pointed me back in the right direction, actually helping me manifest my first path as a teacher. His father being the principal of the school I eventually worked at, and let's face it, the reason I got the job. Probably. And divert my path as partner, compelling me to end that relationship in just the right time to begin one with my husband. So, next question, what is the purpose of our lack of interaction now? I haven't talked to this guy in years. I got the Ace of Wands. And from the visual from that particular tarot deck too, I know kind of helped me with a lot of these interpretations. So that's where I do feel like the deck matters. I know you can just have one tarot deck, but there are a lot of intuitive messages that I got from specific artwork. So anyways, so from this particular Ace of Wands, from this particular deck, this someone I've lost touch with and honestly never expect to see again. And from this card, it looks like that friendship has served its purpose, run its course, and now withers into the ether as the torch is passed to me to run with my own potential. So then I pulled an oracle card from this combined cosmic and avatar deck, and I got Celestial Teacher. My stomach is growling. I don't know if you can hear it. So Celestial Teacher, intuition told me this was this guy. A teacher setting me back on my path and connected to me in spirit, whether we're meant to have a significant connection in life or not. The guidebook tells me that I'm the teacher, though, and perhaps this is so by virtue of being his student and remembering who I am and my abilities. It's interesting that I literally became a teacher with his help in part, and the guidebook certainly calls for me to put myself out there in that role again. Maybe not as a classroom teacher, but something. So then I drew a second oracle card. I got Union. Intuitively, I see the meaningful union of two soulmates at the time it was needed. The guidebook then reminds me that I am a unified whole within myself and do not need to seek that in another. I liked that. And then I had a flyer when I was shuffling from the Sacred Rebels Oracle deck, one of my top favorite Oracle decks. I love that deck. So I set that aside and took it into account, and it was what is already with you. Completely echoes the above. No need to seek outside myself. I have what I need within and must share this light with the world. And then I decided to draw another card, and I got She Feels, She Knows. Perfectly supplements the card that first flew out on its own. Honestly, the same message and even healing process of seeking within, not without, and shining my light. This guy was the reminder not meant to be the provider. So just an example of like how I was able to explore something that had happened in my life. It wasn't all just the abstract, soulful speculation and such. This actually helped me unpack something about my past and feel validation in what that was, because that's what I always suspected that it was. I thought it was a soulmate connection. Soulmates, at least as far as I see them, I don't limit that to a romantic partner. I think that they are just people who are meant to be not even in our life for our whole lifetime, maybe just a passing moment. They're just there to hold some kind of mirror to us and help us realize something about ourselves and help instigate necessary change. And that was exactly the purpose that friendship served for me at that particular time. So it was really cool. So anyway, I went on as I was reading this book then to do these sorts of readings as it seemed prompted. So like another day I did one where I was asking, what is a primary aspect of my soul's nature? How do I express this in my life? What does my soul seek to experience in this life? How have I fallen short of this so far? How have I succeeded in giving my soul this experience so far? And what can I still do to give my soul the experience it wants in this life? And what do I need in order to achieve this? It's just like totally off the cuff readings. I wasn't going and looking up tarot spreads. It was just like, as I had the questions, as I was pulling a card and then a new question would pop in my head, I just was having these conversations with my soul or my spirit guides. And it was so fascinating. And this conversation wasn't over yet. I proceeded to ask, what blocks me from this? How do I overcome this obstacle? And then another day I was like, I guess when I got to the part where it was about, your soul choosing the next life to go into, why did my soul choose to, incarnate where it did in the world? Why did my soul choose my body? Why did my soul choose my family? And yeah, that was the reading, I think, where I kept asking questions. And then I got that Four of Swords that was like, stop thinking about it. Just your soul chose it. Just live that life, okay? Live the life it chose. End of this conversation. Am I saying my soul is being kind of a dick to me? But what I love is the question, or the answer to the question, why did my soul choose my body? I was reading with the Practical Magic deck, and I pulled this. I was delighted to no end. My soul wanted to be an 80s child. I just know it. I just know it. That Boomba, I mean, how fun. I loved it. I honestly, that was my first thought, was my soul wanted to grow up in the 80s. And have fun and dance the spirit of the fool. It was great. And obviously, I mean, that's a generally lighthearted deck anyway, so I wasn't really going to draw anything too heavy with it, but that image really spoke to me, and it was just great. So I mean, this was so much fun. So if you do end up reading that book, or you're just reading anything where you're contemplating things like this, if you've never thought to grab your cards before, I really encourage, as a part of your reading process, and even if you're reading fiction, fiction can kind of serve a soulmate purpose sometimes, holding that mirror up to ourselves and get us contemplating about things in our own lives, not just the fictional characters on the pages. And so it is just so great to have a deck on hand when these questions pop up in your mind. And to do these readings in tandem with that kind of material, those kinds of contemplations, it was just awesome. And I don't know, incredibly, incredibly meaningful. So I'll never forget it. So then what else? On a less profound note, other readings that I've been doing this year. I've got a cat situation going on in my backyard because this is not something I ever encountered in the States, and maybe it was just by virtue of where I lived. Maybe there are certain regions of the US where it's common for people to like let their cats outside, but like living in Chicago and the Chicago suburbs, people kept that shit inside. Like the cats didn't go out of doors. They were fed and they peed and pooped inside. Here, everyone just lets them out and they find their way back to their respective homes by night. So we get cats from other people's homes roaming through our yard. I guess thank you, because I assume they are hunting. And as of this year, I don't need to assume that. I've witnessed it. Unfortunately, there's one that twice in front of me attacked a wood pigeon, and I couldn't handle it. I understand cycle of life. This is how it goes, but I don't even think it intended to eat it. I think it just wanted to play with it. So I gotta say, I intervened. I did intervene because I think it was just toying with it. And it was like right when they're mating and they're supposed to bring up their babies, you know, when spring has sprung, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle thinking of a wood pigeon not making it back home to its nest, so I stepped in. Maybe I shouldn't have interrupted something natural, but anyway, I see them like playing with the frogs, and I'm sure that they are catching mice, which I don't want to get into the house, so again, that is the good thing. So for the most part, I try to like, But anyway, as you can probably tell, like I've spent a lot of time like watching these cats, observing them, and their little antics out there, and I think our neighbors got 2 additional ones, because at one point there were like 3 of them that were like coming into the yard with each other, all 3 of them back there. It's not that big of a yard. So they were very noticeable, and it really like amped up the activity, like really properly feeling like Nat Geo back there. And so it was kind of like intense. And I had like and I still have like very different personality profiles assigned to each of them, and what I think their role is in the group, you know, like I can kind of see the alpha of the group, and I can see like the wannabe of the group, and I could see the one that was like very reckless, very spontaneous, where the other one is like more measured and calculating. And so it was that goofball that was attacking the pigeons, and the only one that was actually royally pissing me off, especially because these aren't my cats. These are someone else's, and I have no way to keep them out of the garden. I've tried like spraying with a cat spray and scattering like this pepper stuff that's supposed to deter cats from plants and stuff like that. And so I can at least do that in strategic places by the bird feeder, so I don't feel like I'm hanging this feeder to lure birds to their deaths. But other than that, like maybe I can keep them away from this area, but I can't keep them out of the yard. And so my imagination's gone wild with them, and I've had a love-hate relationship with them, I gotta tell you. So I ended up pulling out, you know my bags, right? I pulled out my bag of the natural world, where I've got kitties. Got a cat deck. I did not have this deck when I first showed that bag and what was in the bag, but I've got this deck now. Grimalkin's Curious Cats. So I don't even own a cat. I think I'm the first cat person to not actually own a cat. So I've got this cat deck, and I like it because the images of the cats, you know, used in this collage style it's photographic. Because sometimes illustrated cats, or just animals in general, it's hit or miss for me. So I like that these look like real cats. But this is MJ Cullinane. And anyways, I've been using this deck a lot to answer the questions that I have for these cats and about these cats. Because, for example, the one that I was really waging war on after it had attacked a wood pigeon for the 2nd time right before my eyes, it was right before I traveled to the States to visit my family, and I went back there and I was telling them like how upset I was and how I was trying to like telepathically communicate with the corvids of the yard, the crows and the magpies, maybe even the foxes, maybe bring in the foxes. But at the very least, I wanted like the bird kingdom to fight back and hold its ground. So I was saying how I was willing these other animals to step in and help. I was even like trying to like ask another of the cats for its help in getting this other one in control. I didn't want it to be hurt. I just wanted it to be dealt with. So obviously, as I'm saying this, you know, I'm thinking and I'm saying it more or less in jest, but also like hashtag kidding, not kidding. Ever since I came back from that trip, that cat has been nowhere to be seen. The other two are still coming into the yard all the time. So I'm getting a little worried. Maybe this happened. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was causing a problem for the neighbors too, and they gave it away. Maybe it was a little too reckless as I had pegged it for and lived to regret it somehow. But so you can bet I picked this up to do some readings on what happened to this cat. And I don't know, for that reading, I don't think I was in a very clear state of mind. I didn't really get a clear answer on it. And I don't know, maybe I'm not meant to know, but I've got this little tiger's eye kitty that lives with this deck. I've been talking for 2 hours now, and I'm actually starting to lose my voice. It's a good sign to wrap this up. But yeah, so this is another deck seeing a lot of action this year so far, as I have cat questions. Does anyone else out there do this? I'm thinking so. I think I can't be the only one, especially people who own pets. You must be doing readings all the time trying to understand your animal. But especially since these aren't my pets, they're such a mystery to me. So then what else? Oh, I guess the last thing, also grabbing from my animal deck, I've got this one. Speaking of corvids. And this pouch has Pouch Pals. 2 decks in one. I keep my Urban Crow in here as well as the Raven's Dream Tarot. Both, once again, MJ Cullinane decks. And I will use this often with the Grimalkin just to get, you know, some birdie input on that when I want an oracle pairing. So that's been helping with some of my cat questions. And the Raven's Dream Tarot. I'm just mentioning this because I had such an enjoyable time with a particular pairing early in the year, and I didn't talk about it before I went on my little hiatus, but at the time that I did initiate my break, I would have had these on my little side table to work with. I've got more Pouch Pals. I've been pairing up the Seasons of the Witch oracles because, well, here, this particular pouch is Yule and Imbolc. I have mentioned before that I love pairing them with MJ Cullinane decks, and this was no exception with this Raven's Dream Tarot with the Imbolc. And even though I'm not seasonally in these feels anymore, I just I left them on my side table for a long time. Like from winter into early spring, because they just worked so well together. You've got House Mouse with 5 of Wands. You know the things you are capable of, but are you confident in leaning into that belief? Let's see, 7 of Cups and Rosemary Bread. Share and commune with the ones who mean the most to you. Break bread with the spirit of rosemary, which will call for healing and mend. I've noticed with this oracle, the text isn't poetic anymore. It's a bit more straightforward in its descriptions. It used to always be a little bit more abstract. So it's just one of those cases where, and again, when I've talked about not these specific decks before, but other ones by MJ and this season of the Witch series, you know, they both have a lot going on in the artwork. And so that could otherwise be super distracting, just like altogether too much. But in all honesty, I mostly did do readings just like this, where I'd pick one from each. So keeping it small, I didn't generally do spreads. It was just side table decks where it's at my work desk, not at the tarot table, more of like just day-to-day draws for guidance. And I was just enchanted. I mean, the coloration, it's just, and because there is so much going on in each card, it just gives that much more opportunity for there to be images and colors to connect across, to merge those meanings from the 2 decks. So, it's just magical. I mean, it kind of took my breath away at certain points, so I just would feel remiss not to share that was a pairing I worked with for quite a chunk of the year. And then from that point, essentially, I had traveled to the States and worked with the little stash of decks that I keep there. And then ever since I've been back, I've really just been working with the decks that I'm using with the Ancestral Grimoire. I don't have anything seasonally that I've pulled out for use at this particular time. I'm pretty much just grabbing decks as I want to do a reading, as they feel appropriate for that reading. So I don't really have anything else to share on that. But talking about those 2, for certain at this time of year, for the last 2 years, I used this pairing. And now that I've pulled them out for this video, I will probably just keep them out. So for the past 2 years, I have talked about how I like pairing for Hoxa Tarot, Seasons of the Witch Beltane Oracle. And this is even taking into account that the Seasons of the Witch has a different artist now too. So even with that shift in art style, they still just aesthetically go so beautifully together. And I feel like there is still a continuity between those 2 different artists' approaches. So, fertilizing. Food is not the only thing that nourishes you, dear one. Be mindful of what you feed your soul. Isn't it so nice? There's the two of them fertilizing, and then we've got the two of Earth. So yeah, anyways, great for capturing the seasonal vibes. Now the shift in the color palette from that previous pairing, feeling right now that the days are feeling brighter and greener. So I'll probably, as I said, just leave these out now to keep at my side table for the rest of spring. And that was so much longer than what I was expecting to do. So I think this is going to have to be divided into 2 videos for your sake. I really don't want to upload a feature-length one, even though it wouldn't be the first time I've done it. But yeah, I'll probably break this up a bit, especially since it is just a lot of me babbling and meandering through a whole slew of different subjects. I think I've got my editing cut out for me on this one. So hopefully I can find something salvageable and it doesn't all end up on the cutting room floor. But it's fun to be back and talking to you all again. Thanks for bearing with the absolute miscellany of what I had to share. But again, I just felt like a catch-up was in order. It's been a while. Please do leave me a comment below. Any and all thoughts. I only do this really so that I don't feel in isolation with my practice. I want to have conversations with people about it. So please don't just let me sit here talking at you. Talk right back at me. I'm listening and I would love to hear what you have to say as well. So probably next time will be, I would show you, but it's buried under a whole pile of things here. But my ancestral grimoire. I most likely will be back to share that work that I've been doing thus far. And until then, I hope that you are having a lovely spring as we are approaching summer. How is this year almost halfway over already? My God, time is strange. But it's been a good year. I hope yours has been as well. And until next time, my dearies, bye-bye.